Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Industrial Revolution. I'm Dr. Z, and you are halfway through your AP European History coursework. Good job. Napoleon is dead. He has to die by winter break, and he did. And now we are here in the Industrial Revolution. So it really changed an awful lot. It's a huge turning point, watershed moment in history. One of the things that changes, I'm going back to this first slide here for a second. Look at all the factories, right? The smokestacks, right? Everything that we think of with urbanization and cities and grime and overcrowding, right? Really the birth of the city. I mean, there's obviously cities in early modern Europe, but by this point, which is sort of the mid 18th into the early 19th century, the Industrial Revolution is really sort of taking off, and cities are growing and exponentially. Likewise, workers are really changing, right? So in the traditional economy, you had the cottage industry, the putting out system. People really worked with their family members, lived with their family members. In the Industrial Revolution, a lot of workers are leaving the family's home, right, and going and living in cities. Where they are living in rooming houses and they're working with strangers for the first time in factories, like the women that you see on the right-hand side in the cotton mill there. A lot of people ask, why does the Industrial Revolution start in Great Britain? Because it definitely is a very British phenomenon, but it does spread to the rest of Europe as well. And the big part is coal. All these black spots here are coal fields in Great Britain. There's also a number of other reasons. So there's coal, there's iron. So you have all your natural resources. You also have canals. If you have to transport coal or iron, it's very heavy. The horse in a cart over land, that's very difficult. But if you have a barge on a canal that's pulled by a couple of horses that are on the sides of the canal, even better, right? So, it's plus they're an island. There's more water. So if they need to ship things, it's a lot easier to do that than being a large landlocked country like Germany, which is not landlocked, I realize, but the majority, right, is that they have a smaller coastline, right? Britain has a huge coastline. The next reason is the Methodist work ethic. Methodists, started by John Wesley, they believe that idle hands are the devil's workshop, that work will bring you closer to God and get you a place in heaven. This makes a really good workforce. So a lot of people argue that's a reason why Britain was the first as well. Plus everything we've been talking about related to colonialism and mercantilism, and the economy leading up to this point, right? Britain is a powerhouse in global economics. So they have the money and the raw materials and the goods, right? And the market, with their colonies. And then the agricultural revolution, which is a very British phenomenon, but also is considered a cause of the Industrial Revolution. So I've left these in the slideshow for you. You'll see a couple of these key concept outline check-ins. I want you to read these after you've done your learning and go, do I know this? Okay, so you can pause there and think about that. So one of the hallmarks of the Industrial Revolution is the Great Exhibition that happened in the Crystal Palace in 1851. The Great Exhibition was a world fair, the first in a series of world fairs, which are just loads of fun and very interesting to study in general. But this really was a showcase of all of the wonders of the British Industrial Revolution. So it was organized by the Royal Society for the Encouragement of Arts, Manufactures, and Commerce. Okay, and the motive was to make Britain clear to the world its role as an industrial leader, right? So this is a big PR event, really. 6 million visitors. It was the first place where there was a turnstile, by the way. So we know how many people actually went through the door because of that counting system. Everybody paid about £1 or so to go in. So the fee was accessible to everyone. So it was a cross-class event. And, around 40,000 people a day went, and the entrance fee, that small entrance fee, helped Victoria found the Victoria and Albert Museum, which was named after the King and Queen of England. So the exhibits that were at the Great Exhibition are listed here. So you can see it's a lot of technology. It's really kind of neat stuff in a lot of ways, like the first public toilets, the first voting machine, right? It's pretty neat. Photographs, right? Started in this time period, so that's something really new. And that's really exciting, right? So it's kind of a neat little thing to learn about. And then, of course, do you know where this one is? Hint, hint, it's in Orlando. Okay, we can talk about it later. So the thing about the Industrial Revolution, though, is really what happens to the workers. And here you see an illustration of a young teenage girl who's working in a coal mine as a hurrier. She is carrying this cart of coal by chain. She cannot stand up tall because of the very short tunnels that are carved in there. You even see like a little shiny part on her head. That's because she keeps bumping her head, and the hair isn't growing on the top of her head anymore because she keeps bumping her head. And this is just really horrific, difficult work for a lot of particularly girls and children who were working in the mines. So in England, they create the Mines Act, which finally says, no women were to be employed underground. No boys under 10 were to be employed underground. And any apprentices that were between the ages of 10 and 18 could though work in the mines. Likewise for children, they extended this, this came earlier. I actually should have these slides flipped around. But with the Factory Act, which is no child workers under the age of 9. Employers have to have an age certificate for all children working. 9 to 13-year-olds could work no more than 9 hours a day. But try to imagine this, right? Like try to imagine a 10-year-old working a 9-hour day in a mine or a mill or factory. Right? It's really bonkers. And most of you are 16, 17, 18. Try imagine a 12-hour day, right? From 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Likewise, a lot of factory workers didn't have a lot to eat. Sometimes, a couple pieces of bread, one small meal that they would have in the middle, right? There's no public toilets inside the mines. It's dark, like just a lot of times one of the things that was frustrating for miners in particular is that they're underground, right? So if you go in before the sun rises and you come out after the sun rises, like particularly in the winter, right, then you're never seeing daylight. And that's really hard. It's really, really hard, right? So of course they started changing these laws, and you can see the other laws there that were changed. Another piece of legislation that happened during the Industrial Revolution had to do with farming, and it was the Corn Laws. So after the Napoleonic Wars, Britain was trading with continental England for grain, wheat, and things like that. And corn, by the way, as you can see there, means wheat, oats, or barley in English. And so, at the time at least. So they were afraid that cheap wheat would flood the market and that domestic growers would suffer because of it. So they imposed high tariffs on imported grain, right? Even when domestic supplies were in short supply. So this is because of mercantilism, right? And it makes a lot of sense for them to do that. But what ended up happening was that they had higher bread prices and riots. And the University of Nottingham has a really great website on the Corn Laws, and I encourage you to go there. The link was in the slide before this one. So the Corn Laws get repealed eventually because there's a whole anti-Corn Law league, right, of people who create this wonderful, I love this, this is a sticker that they would put on the back of envelopes that said, "Why tax the poor to support the rich," right? No Corn Laws. And so the higher prices were resulting in landowners gaining power, right? But the working class having a higher cost of living and less growth in other sectors because working class people didn't have money to spend on much else other than food. So, of course, they end up repealing the Corn Laws. And the big takeaway is that the Corn Laws themselves are written because of mercantilism, but the repeal of them is because of laissez-faire economics and free trade. Another aspect of the Industrial Revolution that I find fascinating is the story of Thomas Cook. He's really sort of the first travel agent. There is a group who wants to go from Leicester to Loughborough for a temperance. It's an anti-alcohol meeting. And so he contracts a train and says, "All right, everybody get on the train." You can see the first sort of train there with no roof, and it's a 1 day trip, there and back, round trip. And he charges $1 per person. And I think they got lunch or something like that, right? And they were able to go to their meeting and then come back. And this is the first arranged travel, right? So then he starts this whole company. And after this, and if you Google Thomas Cook today, you'll see that the Thomas Cook Company is still around. They still do tours. We'll be looking at their stuff for the next few different chapters. And it's really kind of, amazing. And for a historian, there's a handbook of this journey, a 60-page booklet, which is the first vacation brochure. And he promoted tours to the Great Exhibition as well. And much later, his whole travel company goes to different European countries, to Middle Eastern destinations. He operates out of 17 countries today. Obviously, it's not him, but it's that company. You can also exchange money at there's different money exchange houses. So this is a company that started in this time period and has had quite the longevity. But from a historian's point of view, what's this the birth of? Tourism, right? And that's amazing as an industry. The last slide for our discussion today is about the benefits and the costs of the Industrial Revolution. One of the big questions is, was it worth it, right? So you get the expansion of wealth, you get population growth, you get infrastructure, right? But what's the cost of the Industrial Revolution, right? Yes, there's amazing things like, more food and tourism and, lots of, more working aspects, and you can maybe work pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And, if you work hard, you can get out of poverty and that sort of thing. But the costs are a lot, right? So you have massive urbanization, squalid living, urban living conditions, unequal distribution of wealth. Families are not working together anymore. People are working more and more hours than they ever were. And money becomes the main thing that people need. The barter economy is gone. The traditional economy is gone. And the division of the classes, the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, it's very obvious. So that's for you to decide, right? Do the benefits outweigh the costs or not? Thank you. We'll see you in the next one. Industrial Revolution Part 2 is coming up.